All right, so without further ado, we are going to have our first presenter, which is a short video from Eileen Shapiro. So without further ado, that video.
Good morning and welcome to the 2020 State of the Akron Zoo. I'm Eileen Shapiro, your Summit County Executive and a proud supporter of our county zoo. I'm honored to be here with you all today as we celebrate one of my favorite Summit County features. For generations, the zoo has opened its gates to the residents of this community and many others from near and far. To share a personal story, a couple of years ago, we held a family event at the zoo. Friends and relatives came from across the country, and they were amazed and thrilled with the time at our zoo. They were wowed, and many said their zoos didn't even begin to compare. We truly have a gem here right in our own hometown. Over the years, with commitment and tireless leadership, it has grown to be much more than just a fun destination. Today, the Akron Zoo provides enriching educational opportunities to children and adults alike. And it is a shining example of conservation, environmental sustainability, and inclusivity. It is also a part of the fabric of Summit County. Hundreds of thousands of people visit the zoo each year, making it the most visited cultural attraction in our county. This November, the Akron Zoo levy will be on our Summit County ballots. I urge you all to consider supporting this incredible asset. Doug and his team have proved to be worthy stewards of our public funds. For every dollar of public support the zoo receives, it generates $8 for our local economy. This levy will help keep the zoo affordable and fund exhibit expansions. Our support of the zoo will benefit all of us for years to come. I look forward to the zoo's continuing its exciting future. Thank you.
All right, thank you again. And now we are going to throw it over to Michelle Santana, who's going to give a short little introduction of herself. Hi, Michelle. Good morning.
Welcome, everyone. By way of introduction, I am Michelle Santana. So let me just start with saying how excited I am to serve as the new board chair for the Akron Zoo Board of Directors. I really look forward to the zoo continuing the growth of educational opportunities, furthering the protection of endangered species, and creating exceptional habitats that bring our guests nose to nose with amazing animals from around the world. While we have learned many things during this pandemic, and I mean many, many things, we've also reaffirmed that the Akron Zoo is resilient. And that resiliency is really thanks to my colleagues on the board, our Akron Zoo staff, our volunteers, community partners, and our guests that have allowed your Akron Zoo to continue our mission of bringing your life closer to wildlife. As we approach 2021 and on, I feel confident that the zoo will continue to create memorable experiences with new habitats, such as the Learner Family Foundation Wild Asia that's opening in spring of 2021, and providing a multitude of opportunities for our guests to become champions of our natural world. Now, it's my pleasure and my privilege to introduce you to Doug Piekarz, our president and CEO of the Akron Zoo. Over to you, Doug.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Michelle, for that introduction. I appreciate it and welcome you and your leadership as our new board chair. And thank you, Eileen Shapiro, our county executive, for those kind words and for your continued support. What I'm going to share with you today is an update on the state of the Akron Zoo. We tend to do these presentations about once every other year just to keep the community involved in our mission, the mission impact, and how we actually go about conducting ourselves as both a good corporate citizen and what we believe is a great community asset. And with that, I will start with the PowerPoint. So our economic impact study actually has an interesting story behind it, because about 5 years ago, I sat down with the Greater Akron Chamber to ask them the best way for us to move forward to look at truly measuring the economic impact of the zoo itself, because this ultimately is part of our mission as a good corporate citizen and a good community asset. At the time, we were advised to try to find an agency that we could work with outside of the area where they wouldn't necessarily have a reason to try to make the zoo look good. And so we actually reached outside of the state of Ohio and settled on a company in Chicago who does these types of economic impact studies for organizations like ours around the country. And the numbers that you're about to see in this presentation all come from marketing and feasibility advisors out of Chicago as our third-party reviewer based on year-end audited financial information. So first of all, I think most of you on the call are already familiar with our mission. Our mission is to connect your life to wildlife while inspiring lifelong learning and conservation action. And those who have seen me talk before know that I refer to this as our mission triangle. Our mission triangle requires us and everything we do to connect people to wildlife, to inspire lifelong learning, and to relate to conservation action. And if in fact we can't accomplish that connection through our mission triangle, we simply don't do whatever activity we're considering. So it is particularly important for us from an authentic standpoint to ensure that we constantly remain focused on that mission triangle. Much of what you're going to see here today in the way of impact relates to that. So we also know that that mission has three primary areas of focus, which are obvious. The first being conservation, also our education landscape. And I'm talking about this as a landscape because it's more necessarily than any one individual school district or any one individual education program. And remaining authentic as one of the best science and STEM learning providers in the region is really important to us. And I'm going to be knitting together how the story between our conservation outreach and the care of the education landscape benefits the community, which is the third major pillar. If you look at where we've been, and this bar graph here demonstrates our growth in attendance and engagement on site from 2011 through 2019. We've actually seen a 27% increase in our attendance across that time. And in fact, if you look at the last 3 years, we were around 400,000 people or higher 3 out of the 4 years, with 2018 being an exception because it was an exceptionally rainy year. We see this as an end result of the level of engagement and programming that we've developed across the organization over that time. One thing we also do know, and this is actually a foreshadowing to the next slide, is about 40% of the guests who actually use the Akron Zoo, 40% of that 400,000, come very hyper-locally from Summit County. The other 60% of guests who use the Akron Zoo come outside of county. And this is particularly important when we start talking about economic impact, because we are bringing in large groups of people to the middle of Summit County who then spend their day, their weekend, and their time and their money here as well, which benefits the community that is currently supporting us. So to date, that economic impact since 2011 has yielded almost $600 million, so $581 million, more than $500 million in economic activity inside Summit County since 2011. That is a huge number. And when we look at what that really means, that number means that for every public dollar invested in the Akron Zoo since 2011, we have returned nearly $8 in economic impact inside Summit County. That's a relationship here where every dollar that a taxpayer shares with us returns $8 to support others in the community. And this is on top of the fact that we have multiple programs across the year to provide the value back to every single citizen of Summit County for the money that they provide to the zoo in the way of public support via free admission programming, either in our Summit County Community Days or during one of our 3 free admission days, or a whole series of other programs throughout the year. It truly is a value ratio that comes back to the county much larger than the level of engagement between the citizens of Summit County and the zoo. And this is something we're particularly proud of, especially in the midst of an economic downturn, because it demonstrates the importance of the zoo as a community asset and an economic engine. So if we look at that economic activity, the economic activity over this point in time has increased by more than 40% since 2011. Those numbers include direct, induced, and indirect economic activity of the organization over that period of time. The labor income is another place to look as we look at the economic impact. And really, when you look at this slide, you'll see that the line actually follows a similar increase to what we saw on the last slide regarding economic activity. And over that period of time, more than a 40% increase in labor income is an end result of the activity within Summit County as well. And one of the key things here that I would underline is that the zoo being in Summit County with this level of economic impact supports over 800 other jobs, people not employed here at the Akron Zoo, as an end result of us being located here as a community asset and performing our mission functions in the Akron Zoo in the center of Summit County. And that's not something to underscore, it's something to highlight. That's on top, as I said, of the roughly 140 staff members who are permanently employed here at the Akron Zoo. When we look in another area, because one of the questions that had typically come up is with the zoo receiving public funding, what kind of public funding does the zoo return to the community? And we see a similar growth rate in public funding returned to state and local municipalities as an end result of taxes that are actually collected due to the business that's being performed here on site. And you can see on the bottom of this slide the very specific dollar amount across that period of time from 2011 to 2019. The zoo had returned over $21 million during that time period to the municipalities who do also support us. Now, when we get back to that mission triangle, everything I've just talked to you about so far is about us being a good corporate citizen and a good community asset, because good corporate citizens and good community assets look to support the community as a whole. And in everything we do, we're attempting to do that. I'm now going to move down to one key area of our mission triangle. I'm looking at our education landscape, and the number in front of you right now are the number of people engaged through our professional education programming by our professional educators in just 1 year. So over 91,000 people during calendar year 2019 were involved in professional education programming, either here at the Akron Zoo or out in the community where we brought the zoo to you in order to advance that inspiration of lifelong learning. And this is also another element when we start to tie together conservation action, because how do we create truly unique, inspirational, and authentic science and STEM education programming? Well, frankly, it's as an end result of the conservation programming that we are involved in, both locally and globally, because it allows us to actually connect successful conservation biology stories from around the world to learners right here in Summit County. And you'll see in the next couple of slides the basic detail around this, because in 2019 alone, we partnered with with 81 school districts across Northeast Ohio. We brought over 35,000 students into the Akron Zoo on a field trip to a facility that was built as an informal science learning education center. And that's an important thing to highlight, because a trip to the Akron Zoo for these school kids is much more than a trip to an amusement park or an entertainment venue. It's a trip to lifelong learning, experiential learning, hands-on learning that was built specifically for their needs. Because everything that you see here at the Akron Zoo today is an end result of constant contact with the people of Summit County and what they expected from us. And to authentically deliver that to support the education landscape across our region, we've really placed focus on developing out that inspirational lifelong learning. If you look at the next bullet, with over 131 programs on site, we reached over 6,400 people physically on site in our classrooms, where I'm actually broadcasting from right now because we can't currently have classrooms with children in them. We've converted one of them here today into the studio to broadcast from. And I'll be getting into what else this is used for a little later in the conversation. The last bullet up there is over 44,000 people were reached through our outreach programs, where our professional education staff and our animal ambassadors traveled out into the community to meet people where they are. And when you talk about inclusion initiatives and issues surrounding that, meeting people where they are is particularly important, because we know not everyone can actually come into our gate. So when we talk about remaining authentic and truly providing unique and inspirational opportunities through these education programs, well, all of the other elements of our mission triangle work together to support that. Conservation for us is about saving animals from extinction. We break our conservation programming down into 5 key areas. There's field work, so work in nature to attempt to save wildlife. There's conservation research, or work that we might do in our animal hospital or in our animal care department in order to support the care and the long-term development of species survival programs for individual endangered species and things like that. Then there's our education programming itself, which I think I've already introduced pretty well, but awareness building of the plight of nature is a key critical element to our ability to accomplish our mission. And then when you look at the animal populations themselves, you see our Humboldt penguins on this slide. Our Humboldt penguins are a great example of a species survival plan that are also managed a series of different species by a taxon advisory group. And now that's lingo that goes within the professional accredited zoo and aquarium world. But what it really means is there are a lot of people around the world, including people here at your Akron Zoo. In fact, the vice chair of the Humboldt Penguin Species Survival Plan works with us here and cares for our colony. And it's through work like this that we work to assure that species do not become extinct, especially when they're in human care. We can manage them as an assurance population so that if we see a major catastrophe in nature, we have well balanced from a demographic and a genetic standpoint, animals that potentially could be part of a reintroduction program. And the last piece, which is definitely not least, are green operations and sustainability programs. Because one of the key things about our mission triangle and about conservation action, we feel the need to model what good sustainable living and good sustainable operations to the best of our ability would be. And then to share that widely as a demonstration site so that people can take ideas from our park and actually bring them home or bring them to their business and be able to repeat them there. One of the very early success stories under sustainable operations for the Akron Zoo was the story of our use of water. And our use of water, in a period of about 8 years, we were able to reduce by 80% our water use on site and also divert most, not all yet, but most of our stormwater into on-site biocells or holding areas to be able to prevent that water from leaving our site and adding to the city of Akron's combined sewer overflow issues. And those two pieces were both verified by third parties the same way our economic impact statement was, so that it wasn't just our staff being proud and telling our story, but it was also others standing alongside us verifying that information from a data-driven standpoint. So we transition from talking about sustainability as an organization and within our local environment, and we now look at our conservation programs. The conservation programs that the zoo is part of as an end result of that third piece of our mission triangle, conservation action, have multiple goals leveled at them. First, it's allowing us to be authentic to work both in nature and here on site to protect critically endangered species and their habitat, either through direct labor or some financial support as an end result of fundraised dollars. However, what it really does for us is if you look at the continent of Africa up here and you see that there are 2 programs that we're currently involved in on continental Africa. One of those programs, called Rebuilding the Pride, is the reason Pride of Africa is as successful as it is and as authentic as it is. Because we began working with Rebuilding the Pride probably about 6 or 7 years ago now. And we actually brought Guy Western and John Mananga, the president of that Maasai region, about the size of the state of Connecticut, here to Akron to both help us plan that exhibit so that it was authentic and telling the story of the single most successful African lion conservation program in continental Africa. And on top of that, both Guy and John have remained available to our educators here through connection with other programming so that we really have a way to bring successful conservation biologists from around the world into the programming that we can offer locally across those 81 school districts if desired, in such a unique way that we know no one else, at least locally, is able to do that. And you may remember, if you were part of our opening for Pride of Africa, that both Guy and John came back here to Akron to join us for that opening, and also tour with local media and local schools and other groups, because this partnership that we have developed actually does something dramatically different for our education programming and our ability to be authentic as truly an informal science learning center, whether someone is engaging with our professional education programming or they're just engaging with Pride of Africa. And each one of the programs that we currently work with around the world have similar connections back to the organization and back to our education programming. In fact, most of you, and I'll talk in more detail about this later, probably know that Wild Asia was supposed to open this past summer. Thank you, COVID-19, that will be delayed. But you can see also in this graphic that we have several programs in Asia. Those programs will tie back to the work that we'll be doing in Wild Asia, and we will be able to then authentically deliver on that messaging as an end result. So it really is a critical element. Now, when we look at sustainability as a whole for the organization, we have a number of third-party recognitions over the last 2011 till now. The first is we were the first green restaurant certified for any zoo or aquarium in the United States. And in fact, it was beyond that. It's in North America. And both the Columbus Zoo and the Cincinnati Zoo came here to Akron to learn how we did that. And we now have more 4-star green certified restaurants in the state of Ohio as an end result of the work that was pioneered here. And that's a particular accomplishment for our food service staff. I'm very proud of them. They did it predominantly on their own with some assistance from other areas of the park, but it then became a focus for us to be able to teach others. We've also clearly committed to leadership in energy and environmental design by having both Komodo Kingdom, where I'm broadcasting from right now, being the first LEED certified structure in Summit County, and the first LEED certified structure in a zoo or aquarium accredited by the AZA east of the Rockies. And it's this type of commitment on the part of our staff that's led to the awards on the national level, the state level, and the local level that you can see on the bottom of the slide. The one thing that I would highlight there, the National Award for the AZA Green Award is the highest award that our profession can offer to an accredited organization that's been able to demonstrate from a data-driven standpoint, not anecdote, but data-driven, the sustainability program for their organization and its impact. And we received that in San Diego in 2016 as an end result of the hard work of every single staff member here at the Akron Zoo. So, what's next? I've already kind of let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, on that one, but you can also see a photo of our Sumatran tiger here on this particular slide. We do know that in calendar year 2021, we will be opening Wild Asia. The opening of Wild Asia will be complicated by wherever the nation happens to be, in the state of Ohio happens to be with COVID-19 at the time. But we are planning on a spring or summer opening for Wild Asia at this point in time, and we certainly hope that we're able to open our gates fully to guests safely, but safety will always be the primary concern. So if we take a look at where we are in Wild Asia, knowing that it was supposed to be open this year, but the effects of the pandemic basically slowed that down with slow labor shortages in different areas, supply shortages, things like that. The first thing that I would point out is that this area has been named by the Lehner Family Foundation for their support of the Wild Asia Project, and we're very thankful for that partnership. And you will see this project named in that manner as you enter it when we open next year. The construction site walkthrough that you're about to go through was photographed on August 5th, so it's about a month old. There's been a bit more progress in that area over this point in time since then. And we're just excited to see some landscaping going in at this point and some finishing touches in certain animal habitats happening. But I'm going to share that with you now. First, the inset image in the upper left here is the artist rendering of the iconic entry into Wild Asia. The actual state of that on August 5th is what you see on the bottom right. So that area, as people enter, is going to be supported by those steel supports, but it will be clad in authentic Asian tradition. Different areas of Wild Asia will evoke different portions of Asia because it'll be moving from Sumatra up to Cambodia and then into Nepal. So different regions there will actually have different feelings to them. So this entry is an entry generically into Asia. As we look at this next slide, the image on top is the image of our Tiger Lodge, an artist rendering. The Tiger Lodge is going to be a very unique space for our guests and a very unique space for our Sumatran tigers. And by the way, Sumatran tigers at this point in time have less than 400 animals left in the wild. There are nearly as many animals currently managed in human care through the Species Survival Plan to help build an assurance population against their potential imminent extinction. Because when you have less than 400 animals left in a wild range, that's not a lot, and a single event can actually cause an extinction of that species. So working with Sumatran tigers is really critically important. But as a guest, as you walk through that iconic entryway in the last slide and around what we're currently calling Tiger Habitat 1, which is a fully enclosed tiger habitat. So the tigers, for the first time at the Akron Zoo, will be able to climb floor to ceiling in this space and have opportunities to go places that our old tiger habitat could have never supported. And when we look at Tiger Habitat 1, Tiger Habitat 2, and our 2 night yards for tigers where they can choose to spend the night under the stars if they like, the total space involved here is 5 or 6 times the size of outdoor space that was available to them here prior to this project. Something that's particularly important when you're looking at saving a species from extinction. From the guest standpoint, we do know, for example, that for those of you who have visited Grizzly Ridge, we know that in Grizzly Ridge, people were very interested in our training walls. And the training walls are a place where we invite the animals in our care to participate in their daily care by choice. So at those walls, we're able to open gates, allow the public to watch our professional animal care staff engage with those animals, and through hand commands or verbal commands, invite them to open their mouth for an inspection of their teeth or their tongue, to provide their hip up against the side so that we may be able to give them their annual injections. For our tigers and our lions, potentially offering the tail under the door so that we can draw blood, a whole variety of things like that, that enable us to not have to put an animal to sleep in order to draw blood or to Dremel their nails or something like that. So much of the care that 20 years ago would have required the animal to be under anesthesia as an end result of this behavioral work today does not require it anymore. But our guests are really interested in this relationship and this type of participation. So in the Tiger Lodge, where you see those 3 people in the artist rendering walking in, tigers will be to your left, tigers will be to your right, and tigers will be on top of you. That will be the opportunity in here. There is also an amphitheater inside that will seat, in non-COVID days, about 80 people. So today, perhaps 30, in order to watch safely the animal care staff and our education staff engage at the training wall for our Sumatran tigers. It addresses one of the key problems we found in Grizzly Ridge, that so many people wanted to see this action that they became deep and people couldn't see over other people. Where here we've now fixed that problem, and you'll be able to hear directly from the keepers because they'll also be mic'd. The end result on the bottom, those two photographs, the photograph on the right is inside Tiger Yard 1, the first tiger habitat that's covered, and then the second image actually looks back from the viewing window over the pool inside Tiger Habitat 2, which is an open air tiger habitat that is long so that the tigers actually can run and jump and things like that. But in there, there'll be one place for them to climb, which will be straight up a tree in the center of the space. So moving to the next slide. Bear with me on a minor technical difficulty, but the slide will change in just a moment. There you go. Okay. So this next slide actually takes us to our white-cheeked gibbon habitat. And the white-cheeked gibbon habitat, as opposed to being in Sumatra, is actually located in Cambodia. White-cheeked gibbons, even worse position globally than our Sumatran tigers. There's under 100 animals left based on field surveys, and this is considered a critical globally endangered species. So the species survival plan that we're working with here strongly desires to see us to begin to grow the original pair who will open this space next year into a family group, and then perhaps an even larger contribution as an end result of how we may be able to manage this new habitat, which our director of animal plans here at the Akron Zoo would actually say is one of the best in the country. If you look at the image on the top, which is the artist rendering picks up the type of architecture that you would find in the region that the white-cheeked gibbons come from. And the bay windows in the front in that artist rendering, and as you can see in the construction photo below it, are a day room. And this day room is basically an indoor habitat for the white-cheeked gibbons, where they can leave their bedrooms during the winter when the temperatures are too cold for them to go into their outdoor habitat, and still be able to engage with people, and also have an opportunity to live in a space. And I like to compare this to our homes. Our homes have bedrooms, our homes have rooms that you can play in, our homes have a playroom, a backyard, a front yard, that kind of thing. And we really have the same type of thinking that happens with the animals that are in our care here. But these spaces have to be constructed differently because they really need to meet the needs of the individual animal. And one of the unique things about the white-cheeked gibbons is they don't simply swing, they actually brachiate. They go hand over hand as they're moving through this space, which leads to some requirements for us that would be different than any other primate we might work with. This particular area has been supported by the Robert Owen Anime Orr Family Foundation and is named after them, and we gratefully acknowledge and appreciate their support. You will also find in this space that we've created another training wall for these small apes so that we can have a similar type of conversation, but in a smaller space, as to what will happen in a much larger way inside our Tiger Lodge. And the next space inside Wild Asia, which takes us to Nepal, is the Shelley and Tom Kutnick Red Panda habitat. And again, I'd like to acknowledge Shelley and Tom and thank them very much for their support. This space actually reuses one of the original buildings inside Tiger Valley that was built in 1998 and repurposes it as a state-of-the-art red panda breeding facility. The new habitat for the pandas are directly attached to that A-frame building, which you see both in the lower area in the photograph and also in its finished state or relative finished state in the artist's rendering. One of the unique things about the red panda, there are many more red pandas in nature, for example, than there are Sumatran tigers or white-cheeked gibbons. However, the red panda currently is experiencing what's known as a conservation challenge known as Islands in the Sky. And really, how does that happen? It happens because traditionally, over long periods of time, the valleys and the mountains in the Himalayas where the red panda is native would have supported such a densely furred animal moving from mountaintop to valley to mountaintop to valley in search of mates or in search of food. Today, we're seeing that the valleys themselves heat up so much during that season that pandas aren't able to successfully cross the valleys. And this creates an idea of islands in the sky, which are in the way of the conservation of red pandas. So all of these topics and more will be directly connected to each of these spaces, and each of these spaces are directly connected, if you were to go back to that conservation slide, to projects that we're currently working on in the field so that we can authentically deliver that inspirational science and STEM learning that only we can do because of the kind of content that we have available to us and that real-time access to programs around the world. So to talk for a minute about how COVID-19 has really affected the zoo and how we've looked to pivot to support the community, there's a series of things that happened after the March 17th shutdown. The first one was our strong desire to be a good corporate citizen and a good community asset. And we sat and questioned ourselves, how can we do this if our gates are closed? There were quite a number of things that we came up with as an end result. The first one that I'd like to point out is the education landscape that I've been talking so much about through this presentation was one of the areas that we really needed to make sure that we shored up, especially with school children now learning from home. Our professional educators pivoted quickly and ended up yielding, in my estimation, a ton of online free science and STEM learning opportunities that leveraged our free Facebook platform and other platforms in order to spend it out, and then have people engage with us in real time on those programs in question and answer about whatever that topic of the day was. And what we saw as an end result of all of that program development online, we learned a lot about how to really engage in that online learning. But B, we actually saw our online engagement increase by over 1,600%. And we engaged 3.4 million people during the period of time that we were closed. And so we were particularly happy with that as evidence of being a good community asset and a good corporate citizen, even though we were closed to the public. We also ended up taking other measures across the park because every department was challenged to figure out how to still be a good community asset and a good corporate citizen. Our animal care and vet care departments donated all of their extra N95 respirators because we did have a stock of them that were in place in the event bird flu or something like that were to hit the area, and we were able to provide them back to the local hospital system who were experiencing a shortage to help protect our healthcare workers. We also, through our veterinary department, signed up all of our animal ventilators with the state and registered them in case they were needed to be provided to local hospitals to save lives. We converted our D parking lot, the one that's closest to the corner of Edgewood and Euclid, into a food distribution area, and we served dinners to over 600 families during this period of time. Our horticulture staff really were somewhat disappointed that the entire park was going to be closed through the spring bloom in our zoo gardens and around the zoo. So as an end result of that, they and others in the park gathered those flowers, created flower arrangements, and we delivered them to first responders in the area. The Red Cross partnered with us to actually use our education classrooms because their entire fleet of bloodmobiles had to be grounded because social distancing wasn't possible inside of them. And we're now hosting blood drives in these classrooms. And there's a whole series of other things here that you can clearly see on this slide that we're also involved in, but they were all done from that place of heart, wanting to be able to support and uplift our community during this period of time. And I will also here talk about briefly the impact of COVID-19 on the organization. We did freeze 94 seasonal positions and 4 professional positions. We've also had to make some significant expense cuts, and actually we've seen an imposed 25% capacity restriction on the park, meaning that we can only allow 25% of guests that the park could hold in the park at any one time. We've moved to time ticketing and a variety of other measures as an end result of COVID-19 impact. It has been challenging, but we've also found ways to do it safely in partnership with the Summit County Public Health Department. And I would like to call out Donna and Tanya and thank them for their help as we've gone through this time. On November 3rd of 2020, we will be issue number 47 on the ballot. And for the first time in 20 years, we are asking to partner with Summit County voters in a new way. This would be a renewal of our 0.8 of a mil levy that is already in place and requesting a 0.4 of a mil increase. That request will be $2.92 per month for the owner of a $100,000 home. And it would support the zoo moving forward. And given everything that I've reviewed with you already regarding the investment that we're able to provide for public funding, we do humbly request your support. Issue 47 basically will support increases in science and STEM-based education programming and outreach across the education landscape. It also would increase our ability to be involved in species survival plan and conservation programming, as well as allowing us to provide more education, animals, and exciting habitats, such as potential projects for giraffes. We've talked about an expansion of Pride of Africa, and that's an end result of what really can be done to support education as that end result ultimately. And where did the idea of giraffes come from for the Akron Zoo? It came from the people of Summit County through our constant contact surveys over the last decade. Go on to the next slide. And now I would like to go over to Autumn, who is joining us up at our African lion habitat now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Autumn. I am at our lion habitat, and Doug talked earlier about some of the training and opportunities for people to see the training occur. So we wanted to give you guys a chance to see some of our training. We have our keepers, Mark and Kristen, here this morning. And then we've got our lions, Masinga and Kataba. They're two young females. Now this training is very interesting and for people to watch, but it's actually really important for our keepers. It actually helps the lions be a participant in their care. Mark is having the lion go up right now, and that gives him a chance to really check out her paws, the pads of her feet, her belly, to make sure that she is good. We'll also do a behavior where they open their mouth. That also gives us an opportunity to really get an inside look at what's going on in their teeth. If we weren't able to do this with our lions, in most cases to ensure their health, we'd have to anesthetize them. And that can often be dangerous for the lions. So by doing this training, it reinforces a bond between the keepers and the animals, as well as let them be part of making sure that they get the best care ever. And we do find out what their favorite food is as we're doing this training. And you can see that the lions are really ready for this. This is often a part of their daily diet. So they often get everything that they would normally. We do make sure that it's up to the lions. It's their choice if they want to participate. If they choose not to do something, they'll just get that food later in some other format. So it just isn't reinforced with this. You'll see that they are very eager to participate, but often their interest in this will kind of wane as they go on. Pretty short attention spans. We do different behaviors targeting. So each lion has a certain spot that they have to go to. And this is make sure that if there's a dangerous storm coming, we can get them to where they need to be in a timely manner. They are kind of curious, they're sisters, so as any sister would be, they're concerned that their other sister might be getting more than they are, so you're going to see a little bit of looking back and forth going on. We'll also have them lay down, and those will all be different activities that the lions will do. So thanks for joining us for this little bit of an insight into how we train our lions. We're going to go back to Doug now for some question and answer time.
We do humbly ask for your support on November 3rd. We feel that asking voters to partner with us in this new way to accomplish what Summit County people have asked us to accomplish, and recognizing the overall economic impact that the zoo has to benefit this community, that this is a good opportunity. A question I've commonly gotten as I've spoken with councils and others around the county is, why are we on the ballot in the middle of a pandemic? And that's a really good question, because I don't think any of us would have ever chosen that. But our existing levy is a 7-year levy, and this is the time frame. We were last on the ballot for a renewal in 2013, and we do need to be on the ballot this November. There's a variety of legal reasons why, but this legislation for us to be on the ballot this November was approved by Summit County Council last year. So it was pre-COVID, and in fact, COVID was not even a glimmer in anybody's eye. So I thank you for your support. I thank you for partnering with us if you happen to be a community partner. I thank you for your support in general across the board, and I truly hope that you enjoy your Akron Zoo.